Hi, I'm Simon K. Jones, and you're listening to the latest chapter of The Mechanical Crown, my ongoing weekly serial that you can read over at simonkjones.substack.com. Today's chapter is called Machinery of State. Levers and pulleys, gears and belts and cables, steam, burnt faces, dry eyes, torn nails, broken toes, crushed arms, every surface grease and oil and blood and sweat, all lubrication to the machine every day, from the sleeping wall to the factory floor, awake, sleep, repeat, skin, cracked, wounds still fresh, fingertips scrubbed, keep going, or it's the whip and the pit. Tarn lives, but barely. His name he'd given himself, having heard it in his sleep. The guards call him Boy. When they call, he does as he is told. He keeps his name for himself. It is his one possession. Time drifts in the tunnels and factories and machine rooms of his limited existence, the shifts looping on repeat. Work, sleep, on shift, off shift. The work continues until the worker collapses into the dust. When the guards give orders, the workers obey. Tarn is on the machines. Following the operating patterns he's learned every waking moment of his life. It's levers and pulleys, buttons and pumps and dials, wheels and primers. Pressurize and release, gears and cables and pistons. The machines fill the chamber from end to end, floor to ceiling. Gantries and ladders crossing the rock-hewn space into the dark above. Guards patrolling every control surface, powered by a worker. The machines were useless without the workers. The heat was matched only by the noise, the endless clanking of metal and hissing of steam. The machines are useless without the workers. The heat is matched only by the noise, the endless clanking of metal and hissing of steam, and the coughs and cries and sighs of people. Something catches in Tarn's machine and the levers stick, the pistons stop and the dials drop. A guard shouts and points, sending a fixer to investigate. Tarn is glad he isn't a fixer. The fixer is younger than Tarn and smaller, which makes it easier for them to climb inside to see what's wrong. The machine failing is bad for everyone and makes the guards angry, and nobody wants to go to the pit. Tarn thinks that perhaps he'd pulled the wrong lever or had simply worked too fast, causing the mechanism to trip over itself, and hopes the guards won't notice and the fixer won't tell. The smaller boy goes into the machine, actually inside it, because that's how they get fixed. Tarn can't see what's happening, but hears the boy moving around inside, loud hammering noises and scraping, and collars being shifted and dropped back into place. Sometimes a part needs replacing, or the mechanism jams and needs reseating, or gears need lubrication. He doesn't like standing at his station without doing anything. He wants his hands and feet to be moving, otherwise the guards will start paying attention to him. It's always easier to do a good job, stay quiet, stay unseen. At last there is a series of bangs and clacks and cracks, and the machine starts whirring again, and Tarn has to move fast to grab the controls. The pistons pump, and the engine roars, and the pipes start rattling, and he hears a brief scream. Valves open and close, spraying a mist of blood into the air. Around the edges of the machine, where it cycles open and closed, a stream of red leaks out and down through the mesh flooring to the level below. He sees it splash onto another worker, who ignores it and keeps working. "Machine's up and running!" a guard shouts from behind his mask. "All good now." Tarn doesn't know what the machines are for. He doesn't question it. All that matters is that they keep working. And he's glad he's not a fixer. The master watches from the highest walkway. Tarn knows it's the master, because of his clothes, which are bigger than those worn by the guards, wider shoulders and a taller mask. Anyone that isn't a worker wears a mask, leaving only their eyes visible. The guards all look the same to Tarn, all behave the same. Perhaps they have the same face, or are even the same person. They share the same cruelty. Everyone is scared of the master, even the guards. Sometimes Tarn sees someone else standing beside him, a shorter figure, perhaps a girl. She doesn't wear the uniform, and has a white mask. They only ever stand on that high walkway, where you can't see them clearly or hear anything they say. When the master appears, it means a change of shift. Tarn shuffles away from his machine and follows the line of workers, mostly boys his age or younger, down the tunnels and into the mines. The walls and ceiling close in, the cavernous factory floor replaced with rough passages dug into rock and earth. The tunnels split into so many routes, it's impossible to keep track. If the guards didn't show them where to go, Tarn would be lost. Some of the tunnels stretch for days. Workers at the far ends sometimes never come back. Tarn hopes he's not being sent to the faraway tunnels to dig new holes. Bodies line the sides of those distant tunnels, where workers have collapsed and never recovered, left to rot back into the soil. The last time Tarn was sent further out, he passed a skeleton still holding its shovel. There is no lighting at the far ends, and they have to hold candles while digging. Sometimes it's easier to hold the candle in the mouth, while keeping hands free, wax and ash burning into faces. They build scaffolding, not venturing far from the machine chamber. Metal and wooden frames, supporting pipes running the length of the ceiling, stretching from the machines to the dark, distant tunnels, and splitting off down side passages. He hammers and screws and holds and braces until his arms cramp and his legs want to buckle. He has no idea what any of it is for. Towards the end of the shift, Tarn is working on a section of the scaffold, passing from the tunnel through an opening to a much larger cavern. Inside is a huge device, spherical and half complete, intersected by the pipework which extends out and away along many tunnels. Tarn doesn't know what it is. Understanding isn't important. He does what he is told, stays quiet, works hard, avoids being sent to the pit. Sweat is worn like a layer of clothing beneath their rags. Sweat is ever present, other than for the brief moments after Tarn walks through the waterfall, when it is his turn to wash. Many sleeps go by between washes, the sweat caking layer upon layer, picking up dirt and dust and grit, oil and steam and lubricants. There is no such thing as a cool place in Tarn's existence, but the furnace is hotter still. The tunnels are disorienting and frighteningly dark, but it's the furnace he truly dreads. Shoveling fuel into the ovens, doors opening and slamming, pumps wheezing, pipes rattling, steam venting. He doesn't know how it works, only that the fuel is dug from the tunnels, put into the furnace, and sent to the machines. Air thick with odd smells, eyes burning, throats stinging. The furnaces are where workers go to die, collapsing with shovels in hand, or slumped upon the conveyor belts. Once Tarn saw a girl faint and collapse headfirst into the oven itself. What remained was dragged away. The work continued. It is important work, must be, for the guards to take it so seriously, for so much to be expected of all the workers. The task must be the most vital there ever was. After 2 shifts, with creaking joints and aching bones, it is time for rest. The sleeping wall is cut into a vertical chamber, dim lights barely illuminating it from the ground. Tarn's spot is 12 holes high, and he drags his weary limbs up the ladder. He has to shift to the side to let others pass on their way down, taking his place on shift. When he reaches his hole, it's still warm from the previous occupant. There are stains on the thin mattress, and what looks like blood on the rough wall. The carved space is barely long enough to accommodate him, and the rail is pitifully inadequate. The guards call them coffins, although Tarn isn't sure what that means. One particularly troubling nightmare and he would be sent over the edge. He'd seen it happen, heard the scream and sudden silence, the thud, the grumbling of guards. Still, it is a quiet place, all his own for a short time. He would close his eyes, sleep, dream, think of places and people he didn't recognize or understand. Things he had never seen, yet which appeared in his mind while he slept. Perhaps he would dream again of the woman. It was a small escape, something of his own. The guards had their uniforms and sticks always clean. The sleeping hole was Tarn's, even if he did have to share it. Sometimes he would think to himself before resting. In darkness he would try to recall the faces of all those who had died that day, to lock them into his mind such that he would never forget. By doing so, they would keep living after a fashion, kept alive by his thoughts. He would make for them a new place to be, safe and quiet and cool. Then sleep would come and go briefly, and then the shift would begin again, and he would do his work diligently, staying unnoticed, never knowing why or for whom. Levers and pulleys, gears and belts, and cables, grease and oil, and blood and sweat, and never, not ever, an end. Thanks for listening. You can leave a comment and subscribe and get some behind-the-scenes info over at simonkjones.substack.com.